So all these things, the amount of things that influence a narrative is infinite.
So those things from your childhood are in this film.
And things from my adulthood. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's a great fairy tale about three brothers that set on the road to marry a princess. And whoever the brother impresses the princess the most, who's really bored, will win her hand. And in comes this strapping young lad, and he's going to tell her about his adventures. And the second lad is also very brave. And the third lad is a quiet, pale kid that is gathering trash on the road. Oh, a dead bird, I'm going to put it on my pocket. A little bit of cord, I'm going to put it in my pocket. A stone. And when they come in, the two strapping lads have very little to say, but this guy pulls out the dead bird, and the princess goes, "What is that?"
Yeah.
"A dead bird. Why do you have it in your pocket?" "Well, I thought it was really beautiful. Look at the feathers." And he has a story to tell. And I think that's the storyteller is the person that picks up useless little things along the road and has stories to tell about them.
I've always wondered, what makes a story a story? Why is it not just an order of events? When we say, wow, that was a great story, if it was a movie or even just a verbal story during a conversation, the question of what made it a story has always fascinated me. Of course, you have a beginning, a middle, and end. You have a character that makes decisions, and ultimately there's usually some kind of arc at the end of the story or revelation. But something about storytelling has always felt somewhat abstract and unapproachable. Well, that's why I love this interview with Guillermo del Toro. The reason I want to deconstruct this and talk about this, and the reason why I think it's valuable, is because within the words of this great filmmaker, during an interview that he's just speaking off the cuff, but he really reveals the answer to this question. And this is a big deal because this is literally a question that I've been thinking about for many, many years. Since I was a kid, probably. What is a story? And in the few words of this interview, you really get a grasp. Of course, I'm going to link the full interview below. So if you want to check it all out, it's there. But I'm going to just break down my favorite moments and expose really how valuable this really could be to all of us storytellers out there.
The amount of things that influence a narrative is infinite.
The first point that Guillermo del Toro makes about being a storyteller and a filmmaker is that the things that influence the story, the elements, let's say the pieces of the recipe, the sugar, the eggs, and when you're baking a cake, right, you have those basic ingredients. I don't bake cakes, so but you have those basic ingredients. Well, every story has basic ingredients. If we talk about the Wizard of Oz, you have a talking scarecrow, a talking tin man, you have a little girl with red ruby slippers and a witch, and you have those elements, right? Those pieces. And then the pieces are brought together, and we're going to get to that. And this seems very basic, right? But I want to emphasize why this is so important. A true storyteller, they don't just take any elements or pieces. No, they are looking at the world through an artistic lens. And because of that artistic lens, they notice the little things. And I just love how Del Toro talks about this, how he talks about this character in this story that he tells between the three brothers, and you saw that clip, but between the three brothers, the littlest one, or the one you look over, right, the underdog, he's the one who along the road to the princess is picking up these little things: a dead bird, a pebble, a string, right? Those are the three things. But you could think the two brothers, the strong and courageous ones, were the ones who just overlooked all of those things. They didn't notice the dead bird. They didn't notice the beauty of the pebble. But the artist, and I was just talking with a screenwriting friend of mine. We're working on a script together, and he was telling me how ever since he was a kid, he always felt different. He always felt like he saw the world in a slightly different way. And if you're wondering if you're artistic or creative, that's probably the best test. Do you feel like you just see things in a different way, and you notice the things that maybe other people just overlook? Well, those are the things that are so important. And I love the way Del Toro talks about it. You collect them. like, you put them in your pocket over time. I know on my phone I have lists and lists of random thoughts and random things I've observed and random emotions and just ideas, dialogue, movie ideas. I mean, these are all these little pieces that I've collected over my life, and I'm sure Del Toro has a much, much, much longer list. It's just really important to think that that is the first step to a great story. It's not just details. I mean, anybody can compile a list of things. You could go on ChatGPT and just say, hey, give me a list of random objects, and then make it into something. No, it's not just a list of random things. It's the things that you observed because of your unique perspective on the world and your unique character, your interests, your originality. Those are the things that you observed. And I love that about people. We can hear the same poem, the same verse of the Bible, the same line of dialogue in a movie, and that same bunch of words could impact somebody so much that they change their entire life because of it, or so much so that they just don't even remember 5 seconds after. The same set of words can do that, and the artist is the one who collects such things. So just open your mind up to what can you collect. Don't think about where it's going to go and how you're going to use it and how it's going to benefit you. No, just think about, how can I collect this? The next point is organize. If you can tell a story, and I'm quoting, if you could tell a story, you are organizing the universe in some way. That's what Guillermo del Toro said during the interview. This storyteller is someone who organizes. So the first step, of course, is you observe things, you pick them up and you collect them, right? A long time, and you build up a repertoire of ideas and interests. But then the discipline aspect, I feel, the step that many people don't go to. There are many wonderful, creative, and artistic people that collect so many beautiful things, and it's sad to think how many beautiful moments and ideas have been lost because people didn't take the next step, which is to organize them. And this is really where you're, like he said, organizing the universe. And just listen to this quote about cavemen and cave paintings that Del Toro brings up to relate back to this concept.
If you can tell a story and you are sort of organizing the universe in some way, that's why we did it. We were nomadic tribes, right? Going with each of the seasons.
Yeah.
And when we learned to use fire and we settled on a cave, what's the first thing we decided to do? Tell stories.
Yeah.
So we organize the universe through stories.
So the idea is when people lived in caves even, which was just basically a giant rock, even within there, they were organizing their environments to tell a story, to take the hunt that they had and describe it through pictures. And that is the essential step. And Jerry Seinfeld has said a very similar thing about how he gathers material. He said certain jokes, he thought of the punchline 5-6 years after he thought of the setup. Similar to this process, right, with stand-up, with writing a movie or being a film director, a stand-up comic does the same thing. Musicians do the same thing. All artists take all of their ideas throughout their life that they collected, because that's just innate to an artist. An artist does this. It's just part of our nature. And then they organize it. So the organizing is that discipline step, right? It's where you take it all and you set it all up and you give it a structure. Either it's a visual drawing, it's a screenplay, it's a poem. You take it and give it form. You give it shape that's tangible, that now can communicate to people. So think about the importance of communication skills. Any great storyteller is a great orator or visualizer or communicator. It's just essential. You must be able to communicate if you want to be a storyteller. And I know these things all sound very simple, but honestly for me, it just helps, like even talking about it. It just helps me see, it is simple, but it's the thing that so many people look past, right? You see so many movies nowadays that are just like, I don't know, like I've seen this before, this feels flat, this feels lifeless. But when you really think about it, it's because where did they get those little pieces that they picked up on the road? Well, they probably got them from other movies. Or, well, they probably were just told, hey, we need a script in 2 weeks. And then they just wrote up whatever they could without giving it the delicate care of a storyteller. That's the difference between something that's not a story and something that is a story. There's a difference, and the difference comes down to the artistic eye and the way it's organized. So, of course, the first step is observe, the second step is organized, and the third step, I wish it started with an O, but it doesn't, is personalize. You must personalize your work, your vision. This sounds obvious, but it's interesting how this is, without doing this step, do you really have a story? You can tell a story, right? But if it's not personalized, if you don't add your own voice to it, it feels flat. It's like, imagine asking a voice bot online to just read you a story in a mechanical voice. It would feel kind of lifeless, right? And it would feel like mechanical. You need that human touch, the thing that makes it uniquely the artist. You need that. Without that, you don't have really anything to work with. So put your own voice into your story. Don't be afraid of showing who you are. Be vulnerable. Express what uniquely makes you yours. Think about the things that you've observed and picked up along the way, like that, like the third traveler in that story that Del Toro talked about. And think about, why did you notice that one thing that nobody else noticed? Why is your perspective different on this? Think about what makes you individually you. And then after thinking about that, be confident in it. It's scary. It's nerve-wracking. I know for me, there are things I want to tell. There are ways I want to tell my stories that probably won't connect to most people. And that's a difficult decision to make. But ultimately, if you don't at least do that most of the time, then is it really your story to tell? And are you really telling a story in the first place? Or are you just rehashing what's already been done? This is what gives it meaning and value. Without this step, your work, your organization, do they really have the same value? Do they have any value at all if you're not putting your voice into it? What makes it artistic is when you make it uniquely yours, when you put yourself into that story. And if you've ever told a story that people are really invested in and they're really excited about, I'm willing to bet a big reason for that was because you were showing your charisma and you were showing what makes you interesting and what makes you exciting. So just believe me, it's worth it. It's worth taking the risk. Don't tell a story ever again without doing this step. Don't even think about it. It's not worth it. So I hope this added some value to your storytelling. If you are struggling with this process, if you feel self-conscious, just know you're not alone. I've experienced this, and I want to make this channel the best place to find inspiration and motivation to continue to create. So I hope that you can just join me on this journey, that you can subscribe to the channel, and that we can keep this communication going. Let's build a relationship, reach out, and let's make more great art. Okay, everyone, you have a wonderful day. God bless you, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye.